She had always been quiet in school, the kind of student who didn't draw attention to herself. She moved slowly down the hallways, careful with every step, her wheelchair making soft squeaking sounds against the polished floor. Most students barely noticed her. Some ignored her entirely, and a few were outright cruel, thinking that her disability made her easy to push around. Every morning she would arrive early, positioning herself near the back of the classroom where she could see everything, but be seen by very few. She liked it that way. It gave her time to observe the world around her and, in a way, prepare herself for it. Her disability made some things harder, like carrying books or navigating crowded hallways, but she had learned to adapt. She had learned patience. She had learned to be careful. It wasn't that she wanted attention or sympathy. Far from it. She simply wanted to live her life without interference. But high school has a way of finding people who are different, and some students can be cruel to those who are not like them. At first, the bullying was subtle. A shove here, a mocking comment there. It was easy to ignore at first, just small things that passed under the radar. But then it started to escalate. The shoves became pushes, sometimes harder than necessary. The laughter became louder. The whispers behind her back seemed to follow her wherever she went. Some teachers noticed, but not everyone took it seriously. They would give a casual word of warning, then move on, assuming the student could handle it. And she could handle a lot, she had learned that long ago, but it still hurt. Not just the physical pushes, but the way people looked at her, as if she was less than, as if her disability made her weak. Despite all of this, she never let anyone see her fear. She kept her chin up, her eyes forward, her hands steady on the wheels. She had learned to protect herself in ways most people didn't understand. Behind her calm exterior was a mind that always calculated, always prepared. Years of discipline and focus had taught her patience, control, and self-defense. Most of her classmates had no idea what she was capable of. At lunch, she often sat alone. Not because she wanted to, but because it was easier. It was easier than dealing with whispers or judgmental stares. Sometimes a friendly student would sit nearby, sharing a quiet conversation or a smile. Those moments were small rays of light in an otherwise tense day. They reminded her that not everyone was cruel, that kindness existed even in a place full of challenges. The bullies, however, never let up. They seemed to take pleasure in making her feel small. It wasn't just about pushing her around physically. It was about power, about showing her that they could. Some would block her way in the hallway, laughing as she tried to maneuver past them. Others would toss her books out of reach or snatch things from her lap, daring her to react. Every day felt like a test of patience and self-control. Her parents had always told her to stay calm, to not give bullies the satisfaction of seeing her angry. They reminded her that strength wasn't always about fighting back immediately. Sometimes it was about waiting for the right moment. She carried that advice like a shield. She knew that showing her anger too soon could make things worse. She also knew that she was capable of defending herself when the time came. The thing about her was that people underestimated her constantly. They saw a disabled student and assumed weakness. They didn't see the hours she spent training, the sweat and pain she endured to become strong in ways that didn't always show. They didn't see the focus in her eyes, the way she could anticipate a move before it happened. To them, she was quiet and small, someone to be pushed around. But in reality, she was calculating, aware, and ready. One morning, things took a turn that made her realize the bullying would never stop unless she did something. She was making her way to class when a group of students stepped in front of her. One of them laughed and said something cruel about her disability. Another gave her wheelchair a push that nearly made her tip over. She caught herself just in time, her heart racing, but outwardly she stayed calm. She didn't say anything at first. She simply waited, letting them think they had won. But inside, her mind was moving faster than ever. She was analyzing, planning, calculating the best way to respond if needed. She didn't want to hurt anyone unnecessarily, but she also refused to be made to feel small. This was the moment she realized she needed to be ready for anything. Classrooms became both sanctuary and stage. Teachers gave lectures, but she listened not only to the lessons in books, but also to the subtleties of human behavior. She noticed how some students worked together to intimidate others, how body language and tone could be weaponized. She understood patterns, and more importantly, she understood how to use her own skills to counteract them if necessary. Her martial arts training had taught her more than fighting. It had taught her discipline, focus, and confidence. It had taught her to read people, to predict movements and to control her own energy. Those skills were invisible to most people, hidden beneath the calm, quiet exterior. It was her secret power, something no bully had ever suspected. The reality of being a disabled student in a world that often judged by appearances was tough. She had to navigate daily challenges that others didn't even notice. Crowded hallways, heavy doors, social isolation, each was a small battle in its own right. Yet she faced them all with resilience, using her mind and body in ways that balanced patience with readiness. She remembered moments from her training when she had to fall, get back up, and continue. Those lessons were more than physical. They were mental and emotional. They had prepared her for situations like this, for the quiet but persistent threat of bullying. She knew that strength came from preparation and composure, not just brute force. Despite the bullying, there were moments of hope. Sometimes, a kind word from a classmate or a smile from a teacher reminded her that not everyone was against her. Those moments mattered. They fueled her determination to keep going, to continue proving to herself, if not to others, that she was capable, resilient, and strong. As she wheeled herself down the hall each day, the whispers and laughter followed her, yet she never let it shake her. She kept her eyes forward, her hands steady on the wheels, and a quiet resolve in her heart. She had learned that sometimes the greatest strength was in waiting, in observing, and in preparing. The bullies could push her, mock her, and test her, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. And so the days went on. She attended classes, completed her work, and navigated the halls with careful precision. Each encounter with bullies became a lesson in patience and strategy. She didn't know when the moment would come, but she knew that one day she would have to show them what she was truly capable of. Until then, she waited quietly, calmly, ready for whatever challenge came next. She was more than what people saw. She was more than her disability. She was strong, disciplined, and aware, and even though most people overlooked her, she was preparing for the moment when they could no longer ignore her. In that quiet resolve, she found her own kind of power, a power that wasn't loud or flashy but undeniable and real. She knew that strength wasn't just about winning fights. It was about surviving, persevering, and being ready for whatever life threw her way. And soon the day would come when she would no longer be underestimated. The days that followed were harder than usual. The bullying had grown bolder, and the quiet student felt the pressure of constant scrutiny. Hallways that once felt manageable now seemed crowded with tension. Every step she took was measured, careful, as if the walls themselves were pressing in on her. She noticed how the group of students who targeted her moved through the halls, their eyes searching for her like predators. Even small tasks became tests of patience. Opening lockers, carrying books, navigating the cafeteria. It all required extra attention. She learned to anticipate the moments when someone might try to block her way or push her chair. Every movement, every glance was part of a larger calculation she performed in her mind. To the outside world, she appeared calm, even distant. But inside, her thoughts were sharp and focused. At first, she tried to avoid confrontation entirely. She followed different routes between classes, waited for crowded areas to clear before entering, and spoke only when necessary. She wanted to maintain peace, to keep herself out of trouble, but avoidance had its limits. The bullies began to notice her patterns and adjust their tactics. They seemed to take pleasure in finding new ways to humiliate her. One afternoon, while she was heading to her next class, one of the students deliberately dropped a pile of books in front of her. The books scattered across the floor, some skidding into the wheels of her chair. She stopped, carefully moving around the mess, and the student laughed loudly, drawing the attention of others. It wasn't the first time something like this had happened, and she knew it wouldn't be the last. Some teachers witnessed these incidents, but their reactions were slow or distracted. A few offered words of caution to the students, while others assumed she could handle it herself. And in many ways she could, but the frustration built up quietly inside her. She knew she couldn't let it continue forever. She needed to find a way to assert herself without escalating the situation too soon. Her training in martial arts had taught her patience, control, and the value of timing. She remembered the long hours spent learning to stay calm under pressure, to read an opponent's movements, and to react with precision. This wasn't just physical training, it was mental and emotional. She had learned that the right response at the right time could make all the difference. Despite the growing tension, she didn't lose sight of the positive moments. There were still classmates who smiled at her in the hallway or offered small acts of kindness. A few teachers spoke to her privately, checking in and showing concern. Those moments reminded her that not everyone was cruel, that there were allies even in a difficult environment. They also reminded her why she had to keep her composure, because showing anger too early could make things worse. She began to observe the bullies more closely. She watched how they worked together, how they laughed and whispered before acting, and how they reacted when someone resisted them. Each interaction became a lesson. She learned which students relied on intimidation, which ones acted impulsively, and which ones tried to manipulate the reactions of others. With each passing day, she became more aware, more prepared, and more determined. The bullying didn't stay confined to the hallways. In the cafeteria, they would sometimes move their chairs closer to hers, whispering comments that were meant to make her uncomfortable. Sometimes food was accidentally spilled near her and laughter followed. She learned to ignore it, focusing on her own meal and keeping her mind steady. Every moment of patience added to her strength, even if it didn't feel like it at the time. Friends who noticed the bullying offered support, small gestures of solidarity that mattered more than they seemed. A shared smile, a quiet word of encouragement, or a simple gesture of help could make a difference in a day that felt otherwise heavy. Those friends reminded her that she wasn't alone, that she had people who believed in her and respected her. At home, she had a space where she could release the tension that built up during the day. She would practice her martial arts moves, slowly and carefully, feeling her muscles and mind align. This practice wasn't about fighting anyone at school. It was about maintaining focus, strength, and confidence. It reminded her that she was capable of more than what the bullies believed. One afternoon, during gym class, things escalated further. The bullies cornered her near the equipment, laughing and trying to intimidate her. One of them even attempted to knock her off balance, reaching for her wheelchair. Her heart raced, but her mind was steady. She remembered the techniques she had practiced countless times, the ways to remain grounded, to defend herself without losing control. She shifted slightly, maintaining balance, and avoided the push. The bullies were frustrated that she didn't react as they expected. She realized that the moment for avoidance was ending. She didn't want to fight anyone unnecessarily, but she knew that she couldn't allow the bullying to continue unchecked. She had to be ready for a confrontation if it came, and she had to be strategic. Every muscle, every thought, every breath was focused on staying calm and prepared. That evening, she reflected on the day's events. She considered what had worked, what hadn't, and how she could respond if something similar happened again. Her training had taught her the importance of mental preparation, and she applied that skill to navigating the social challenges at school. She understood that true strength wasn't about reacting impulsively. It was about controlling the situation with intelligence and patience. The next day, she noticed subtle changes in the behavior of the bullies. They seemed more cautious, testing her reactions, trying to see if she would finally snap. She stayed calm, moving through the hallways with steady focus. She didn't give them the satisfaction of a visible reaction, but she also didn't allow herself to be intimidated. Each interaction became a calculated test, each move measured and precise. Some students began to notice the tension between her and the bullies. They whispered among themselves, unsure of what was happening, but sensing that something was different. Even teachers who had previously dismissed minor incidents started paying more attention. The quiet student's patience and composure were beginning to change the dynamics around her, even if subtly. She started to recognize patterns in the bullying. Certain students acted only in groups, others only when no teacher was nearby. She began planning mental responses, thinking through how she could protect herself and maintain control in each scenario. This mental rehearsal gave her a sense of confidence that she hadn't felt before. She knew that when the right moment came, she would be ready. Despite the pressure, she maintained her routine. Classes, homework, and practice continued, each day a balance of endurance and focus. She found solace in small victories, like successfully navigating a crowded hallway without confrontation, or receiving a smile from a supportive friend. These moments, though small, reinforced her determination to remain strong and prepared. Evenings were spent in reflection and training. She practiced movements slowly, focusing on precision and control. She visualized possible scenarios, imagining how she could respond without losing composure. Each session reinforced the lessons she had learned over years of disciplined practice. She was not only preparing her body, but also strengthening her mind for the challenges ahead. One day, the bullying reached a peak. The group of students deliberately surrounded her in the hallway after lunch, laughing loudly and making comments meant to humiliate her. Her heart pounded, but she stayed calm. She focused on her breathing, on the position of her wheelchair, and on the movements of those around her. Every detail was noted, every potential action calculated. The bullies expected fear. They expected her to flinch to give them the reaction they wanted, but she didn't. She remained steady, her eyes calm, her hands ready. She understood that this was the moment she had been preparing for, though she didn't act impulsively. She was waiting for the right opportunity, knowing that control and precision mattered more than immediate retaliation. Teachers noticed the tension, but it was too late to intervene immediately. Other students watched quietly, unsure of what would happen. The quiet student's composure stood out against the chaos, a stark contrast to the loud and chaotic behavior of the bullies. Even in this stressful moment, she maintained her focus, demonstrating an inner strength that few had witnessed. By the end of the day, she knew that she could not continue to be pushed around without consequence. She was ready to defend herself, if needed, not out of anger, but out of necessity and self-respect. She understood that strength was not about winning fights or proving something to others. It was about protecting herself, asserting her dignity, and staying true to who she was. The quiet student left school that day with a renewed sense of determination. The bullying had escalated, yes, but so had her readiness. She had learned to read people, anticipate actions, and maintain control under pressure. She knew that the moment of reckoning was approaching, and she was prepared to face it with precision and calm. In the following days, she continued her routine with steady focus. She practiced her martial arts, reflected on her interactions, and observed the behavior of the bullies. Every step, every glance, every calculated movement was preparation for what would come next. She was patient, she was focused, and she was ready. And slowly, subtly, the school began to notice. Her quiet strength was becoming evident, even to those who had underestimated her. She didn't seek attention or sympathy, but her determination, composure, and readiness could not be ignored. She was more than what people saw, and soon they would realize it in ways they could not have expected. The tension in the school had reached a breaking point. The quiet student felt it in every corner, in every glance, in every whisper that followed her through the hallways. The bullies had grown bolder, testing the limits of her patience. They no longer relied on small acts of intimidation. Now their presence was constant, a shadow over every step she took. It was a normal afternoon when it happened. She was moving, from her last class to the cafeteria, hoping to avoid any confrontation when she saw them. The group had spread across the hallway, blocking her path. Their laughter echoed off the walls, sharp and mocking. There was no escape, no alternate route. For the first time, she realized she was truly cornered. Her heart raced, but she did not panic. Years of training had taught her how to control fear, how to breathe through pressure, and how to focus. Every muscle in her body responded automatically, poised for balance and precision. She kept her hands steady on the wheels, her eyes calm, and her mind sharp. The bullies saw only a quiet, small student in a wheelchair, unaware of the storm they had just provoked. One of the students stepped closer, a smirk on his face, and nudged her chair lightly with his foot. The motion was deliberate, meant to intimidate. Another laughed and commented loudly, drawing attention from nearby students. The quiet student's eyes flicked from one to the other, noting their stance, the direction of their weight, and the tiny cues in their body language. Every movement was a piece of a puzzle she had been solving for weeks. The hallway seemed to stretch, time slowing in her mind as she prepared for what might happen next. The bullies expected a reaction, fear, frustration, even tears. They wanted her to react, to give them the satisfaction of seeing her shaken. But she remained composed, her body calm, her mind alert. She had waited for this moment, and she knew that losing control now would only give them an advantage. One of them reached for her chair again, this time trying to tip it backward. She shifted her weight subtly, using the motion she had practiced countless times. The chair remained steady. She didn't speak, didn't show any sign of anger, only maintained control. The student's hand hovered, confused for a brief moment, as if unsure why she hadn't reacted the way he expected. It was in that hesitation that she saw an opening. Not to hurt anyone unnecessarily, but to assert herself and end the bullying in a way that would make them think twice. Her movements were deliberate, precise, and controlled. She used the strength in her arms and core to maneuver her chair in a way that created distance between herself and the students. Her posture was confident, her presence commanding, even without raising her voice. The bullies laughed nervously, unsure now. They had expected fear. They hadn't expected composure. They tried again, moving in closer, testing her boundaries. She anticipated their actions, reading their intent as clearly as if it were written on their faces. When one lunged forward, she shifted slightly, using the momentum to guide the student past her rather than letting him make contact. The move was subtle but effective, and it left him off balance and startled. A small crowd had gathered at the edges of the hallway. Some students watched silently. Others whispered, sensing that something important was happening. The quiet student didn't notice them. Her focus was entirely on the situation in front of her. Every detail mattered. The distance between them, the angle of their approach, the timing of her movements. She was ready, and they didn't know it. The bullying had reached a point where words were no longer necessary. The students were frustrated by her calm, and their attempts at intimidation had become sloppy. That was when she decided it was time to act decisively, not in anger, but with precision and strategy. Her movements were fluid, practiced, almost graceful, as she used her chair to maintain balance while creating distance and control. The bullies didn't know what to do. They had underestimated her for too long. She had trained her entire life for moments like this, not to show off, not to hurt unnecessarily, but to defend herself and assert her presence. Every move was calculated, every shift of her body and chair designed to maintain control while stopping the aggression. One of the students tried to block her path aggressively, but she anticipated it. With a swift motion of her chair and a subtle turn, she maneuvered around him, keeping her balance while forcing him to step aside. His smirk faltered, replaced by surprise. Another student tried to grab her arm, and she responded instantly, moving in a way that used his own momentum against him, guiding him past her without causing harm. The hallway seemed to pause as everyone watched, shocked by the precision and calmness of her movements. The crowd of onlookers whispered among themselves, unable to believe what they were seeing. The quiet student, the one everyone had assumed was weak and defenseless, was not only standing her ground but doing so with skill and control. The bullies, who had always relied on force and intimidation, now froze. Their plan had failed, and they didn't know how to react. For the first time, the quiet student spoke, her voice steady and calm. She didn't shout, didn't threaten, didn't scream. She simply said, "Leave me alone." There was a power in the simplicity of the words, amplified by the confidence and control she displayed. The bullies looked at each other, unsure of what to do. They had expected chaos or fear, not this quiet authority. The tension in the hallway was palpable. Other students watched silently, some with awe, some with curiosity. The bullies realized they had misjudged her entirely. The quiet, disabled student they thought was an easy target was clearly capable of defending herself. The balance of power had shifted, and the bullies could feel it. One of the students tried to push again, hesitantly this time, but she anticipated the move. Her hands were steady, her core strong, and she adjusted her chair with precise control. The student stumbled slightly, caught off guard by her readiness and skill. The others froze, unsure of whether to continue or retreat. For the first time, they were unsure of themselves, and it showed. She didn't pursue retaliation. She didn't need to. Her calm authority, her precise movements, and her confidence were enough to stop them. The bullies slowly stepped back, their laughter gone, replaced by silence. They realized they had underestimated someone they thought was weak, and the realization left them speechless. The quiet student wheeled herself down the hallway, her eyes forward, her movements controlled, leaving the bullies behind. The onlookers whispered among themselves, some impressed, some surprised, all aware that something remarkable had just occurred. She hadn't sought attention or recognition. Yet her actions had spoken louder than words. Teachers arrived shortly after, drawn by the commotion. They observed the aftermath, seeing the bullies standing awkwardly, unsure of how to explain themselves. The quiet student remained composed, calm, and collected, as if nothing had happened, though inside she felt the adrenaline slowly leaving her body. She had faced the confrontation without losing control, without causing unnecessary harm, and with complete confidence in her abilities. The day continued, but the atmosphere in the school had shifted. Whispers followed her as she moved through the halls, not of mockery this time, but of surprise and newfound respect. Students who had ignored her now looked at her differently. The bullies no longer acted with the same confidence, their previous power diminished. She had made it clear that she was not someone to be pushed around. Even though she had successfully defended herself, she remained humble. She didn't seek praise or recognition. Her satisfaction came from knowing she had maintained control, stayed true to herself, and asserted her boundaries without losing her composure. She had turned a moment of intimidation into a moment of empowerment, and it had changed how she was perceived. At home that evening, she reflected on the day. She knew that her life would not suddenly be free of challenges. There would still be bullies, obstacles, and moments of doubt. But she also knew that she had the skills, the patience, and the control to face whatever came her way. She had proven to herself that she was stronger than anyone had believed, and that realization gave her a quiet, deep sense of satisfaction. Her parents noticed a change too. She spoke more openly about her day, describing the hallway confrontation with calm detail, not boasting but sharing what had happened. They were proud, not just because she had defended herself, but because she had done so with such composure and intelligence. Her strength was more than physical. It was mental, emotional, and strategic. The incident became a turning point. She was no longer invisible, no longer underestimated. Students who had once mocked or ignored her began to approach her with respect. Even the bullies seemed to have learned a lesson, realizing that intimidation had limits and that strength could come from unexpected places. She continued her routine, attending classes, practicing her skills, and maintaining her calm demeanor. But now there was a new confidence in her movements, a quiet authority that could be felt even when unspoken. She had faced a direct challenge and had emerged in control, leaving an impression on everyone who had witnessed it. She knew that life would continue to test her, but she was ready. Her strength was not just in her skills but in her patience, her focus, and her unwavering belief in herself. She had proven that appearances could be deceiving, and that true power often lies beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. From that day forward, she moved through the school with a quiet confidence, aware that she had the ability to defend herself and maintain control in any situation. The bullies no longer had the same influence over her. Other students treated her with a mix of curiosity and respect, and she, more than ever, understood the value of patience, preparation, and self-respect. The quiet student had changed the balance of her world, not through aggression but through composure, skill, and intelligence. She had shown that being underestimated was not a weakness but an opportunity, and she had seized that opportunity, leaving everyone who witnessed it, especially the bullies, speechless. After the confrontation in the hallway, the school felt different. It wasn't a change that could be seen immediately, but it was there, in the way students moved, in the way teachers observed, and in the way the bullies themselves carried themselves. The quiet student had revealed something that nobody had expected. She had shown strength, control, and confidence that challenged how everyone had perceived her. Word of the incident spread quickly. Students whispered in classrooms, talked in the cafeteria, and passed notes in the hallways. Many who had once ignored her now looked at her with curiosity, even a kind of admiration. Some of the younger students saw her as a symbol of resilience, proof that even those who seemed quiet or vulnerable could command respect. The bullies, on the other hand, were unsettled. Their laughter had vanished, replaced by awkward glances and uncertainty. They had counted on fear, on intimidation, on the quiet student's presumed weakness. Instead, they had been met with composure, skill, and authority. They were speechless, unsure how to interact with her now. Even the bravest among them hesitated, knowing that any attempt to intimidate her again could backfire. Teachers began to notice the shift too. Some had seen the incident firsthand, while others had heard reports from students. They couldn't ignore it anymore. The quiet student had defended herself in a way that was controlled, precise, and safe, without harming anyone unnecessarily. Her ability to maintain composure and assert boundaries left a strong impression. Some teachers quietly praised her resilience, while others began paying closer attention to how bullying was handled in the school. It was during the next week that the quiet student felt the first real change in how she was treated. The hallways, while still crowded, felt slightly less threatening. Some students who had previously whispered or snickered now gave her a nod or a respectful smile. It wasn't dramatic, but it mattered. Small gestures of acknowledgement helped her feel more included, more seen, and more respected. Even the cafeteria, which had once been a place of anxiety, became more manageable. The bullies still existed, but they no longer approached her with the same confidence. They hovered at a distance, cautious now, unsure how she might respond if provoked. Their presence was still there, but the fear and anticipation they had relied on had diminished. Friends who had quietly supported her before began to feel safer too. They witnessed the confrontation, and they knew that she had the ability to defend herself while staying calm. This gave them a sense of confidence and relief, knowing that she could navigate challenges without losing control. Some of them even began sitting closer to her at lunch, sharing conversation and companionship more openly than before. The quiet student found herself thinking about the incident long after it had ended. She reflected on how her preparation, focus, and patience had made the difference. She realized that the confrontation had not only changed the way others saw her, but had also changed how she saw herself. She felt stronger, not because she had acted with force, but because she had maintained control, asserted her boundaries, and stayed true to herself. At school, teachers began addressing bullying more seriously. They could no longer assume that the quiet student could handle situations on her own. They started implementing stricter supervision and paying closer attention to interactions in the hallways. The incident had highlighted a gap in how bullying was handled, and her response had prompted a shift toward more proactive measures. The bullies' behavior changed gradually. They still tried to maintain some semblance of authority, but their confidence was shaken. Small mistakes and hesitation betrayed their uncertainty. Some students noticed this, and the power dynamic in the school began to shift. The quiet student had shown that strength wasn't just physical, it was mental, emotional, and strategic. Even students who had once remained neutral began to treat her differently. They recognized that she was no longer someone to overlook, someone to underestimate. Her composure, her intelligence, and her readiness had made an impression. Conversations that might have included whispers of mockery now included cautious acknowledgement. Respect had been earned, not demanded, and it spread subtly throughout the school. Parents began to notice the change as well. Friends who spoke to her at home mentioned how the school seemed to treat her with more respect. Her family was proud, not just because she had defended herself, but because she had done so with composure and thoughtfulness. They understood that her strength went beyond physical ability. It was her character, her patience, and her ability to control situations that had made the difference. The quiet student continued to attend her classes, practice her skills, and navigate the halls with steady confidence. She didn't seek attention or recognition, but she noticed that others were starting to notice her in a new way. Students who had once laughed or ignored her now approached with curiosity and respect. Teachers were more attentive, classmates more aware, and the bullies more cautious. Even the smallest gestures mattered. A nod in the hallway, a smile in the cafeteria, a simple hello from a peer. Each reinforced the shift that had begun after the confrontation. The quiet student realized that change didn't happen all at once. It was gradual, built through consistent action, resilience, and composure. She understood that every decision, every response had contributed to the outcome. Her martial arts training continued to play a role, not only in self-defense, but in building her confidence and focus. She practiced daily, not to fight but to maintain control, strength, and mental clarity. Each session reminded her of the lessons she had learned: patience, precision, and the power of observing before acting. These skills had carried her through the confrontation and continued to shape how she navigated school life. The incident had also inspired other students. Some began to speak up when they witnessed bullying, realizing that strength could take many forms. Others found encouragement in seeing someone who had been underestimated rise with composure and confidence. The quiet student had become, without seeking it, a role model for resilience and self-respect. Over time, the bullies adjusted. They no longer approached her with the same aggression. Some tried to regain confidence through small acts of defiance, but their hesitation betrayed them. The quiet student remained calm, observing their behavior and responding only when necessary. She had learned that controlling the situation didn't always require action. It often required patience, awareness, and quiet authority. Teachers, students, and parents alike began to recognize the impact of her actions. They saw that bullying was not just a physical issue but a social and emotional one. Her response had shifted the school's environment subtly but significantly. Respect replaced fear, observation replaced underestimation, and awareness replaced ignorance. The quiet student continued to thrive academically and socially. She made friends who valued her for her character and determination. She found allies who supported her and peers who treated her with the respect she deserved. Her confidence grew not from seeking attention, but from knowing that she had faced challenges, defended herself, and remained true to who she was. Even in the hallways where the incident had occurred, she moved with calm authority. The space that had once felt threatening now felt manageable. She knew how to navigate challenges, how to read people, and how to respond with precision when necessary. Her presence commanded respect without needing to be loud or aggressive. Small victories continued to accumulate. She noticed students offering to help when she struggled with books or navigating crowded spaces. Teachers were more aware and proactive in preventing bullying. Even the bullies, while still present, approached with caution, aware that she was no longer an easy target. Each day reinforced the lessons of patience, preparedness, and self-respect. The quiet student understood that her journey was ongoing. She knew there would be challenges ahead, moments of tension and situations that would test her resolve. But she also knew that she had proven her strength, not only to others but to herself. She had maintained control, asserted her boundaries, and demonstrated that true power comes from composure, preparation, and intelligence. Her family saw the change in her demeanor. She spoke more openly, shared her thoughts more clearly, and carried herself with a quiet confidence that was impossible to ignore. They were proud, not because she had confronted the bullies, but because she had done so with patience, intelligence, and dignity. Her strength was evident in how she navigated life, not just in moments of conflict. At school, the shift in atmosphere continued. The quiet student's peers began to see her in a new light. Respect replaced fear and curiosity replaced mockery. Teachers were more attentive, students were more cautious, and the bullies no longer held the same influence. The hallway, once a place of tension, became a space where she could move with confidence and purpose. She knew that the journey was far from over. There would still be challenges, still be moments when others underestimated her, but she also knew that she had the skills, patience, and composure to face whatever came her way. Her strength was not just physical, it was mental, emotional, and strategic. She had learned that true power is often quiet, steady, and deliberate. The quiet student continued her life with renewed confidence. She attended classes, practiced her skills, and navigated the school with composure. Each interaction, each moment of observation, reinforced the lessons she had learned. She had shown that resilience, patience, and focus could shift the balance of power, earn respect, and create lasting change. In the end, the incident in the hallway became more than just a moment of confrontation. It became a turning point, a reminder that strength is not always loud, that respect is earned through composure and intelligence, and that even those who are underestimated can command authority. The quiet student had changed her world, and in doing so, she had changed how others saw her as well. Time passed, and the quiet student continued to live her life with a sense of calm authority that had grown from the events of the past weeks. The hallway confrontation and its aftermath had changed more than just how others treated her. It had changed how she saw herself. She felt stronger, more confident, and more aware of her abilities. The sense of control she carried was no longer just physical. It extended into her mind, her emotions, and the way she interacted with the world around her. Every day she moved through school with a quiet determination. She no longer feared crowded hallways or lingering glances. The bullies who had once cornered her now gave her space, their confidence shaken by the realization that she was not someone to underestimate. Even when they attempted small acts of intimidation, she remained composed. Her calm presence spoke louder than any words, showing that she had nothing to prove to anyone. She noticed subtle changes in the behavior of her peers. Students who had previously ignored her began to acknowledge her presence with small gestures, a nod in the hallway, a smile in class, or a brief conversation during breaks. These gestures were not loud or dramatic, but they carried meaning. They were signs of respect, signs that the perception of her had shifted from someone to overlook to someone to notice. Teachers, too, had become more attentive. They observed the classroom and hallways with greater care, aware that bullying was not just about physical strength, but about social power and emotional manipulation. They recognized that the quiet student had taught them an important lesson. Her composure, her focus, and her ability to handle a tense situation without losing control demonstrated that resilience and strength could manifest in many ways. At lunch, she found herself surrounded by a small group of supportive peers who appreciated her presence. They shared conversation, laughter, and quiet moments of connection. The cafeteria, once a place of anxiety, had become a space where she could move freely and interact without fear. She realized that strength was not only about defending oneself, but also about creating an environment where respect and safety could flourish. Even the bullies were different now. They no longer approached her with arrogance or cruelty. Some avoided her entirely, while others approached cautiously, their earlier confidence replaced by uncertainty. They had learned, through observation and experience, that she was not a target to be dominated. Their power had been diminished not through confrontation alone, but through her composure, intelligence, and steady assertion of boundaries. The quiet student's martial arts training continued to play a central role in her life. She practiced daily, not just to maintain physical skill, but to reinforce her mental and emotional strength. Each session was a reminder of the lessons she had learned: patience, control, awareness, and precision. These lessons were now applied not only in practice but in daily life, guiding her interactions and decisions. Her family noticed a change as well. They saw her walking through life with a sense of quiet confidence that was impossible to ignore. She spoke more openly about her experiences, reflecting on the lessons she had learned and sharing insights with those who would listen. Her parents were proud, not because she had faced conflict, but because she had faced it with intelligence, dignity, and composure. They understood that her strength extended far beyond physical ability. It was rooted in character, patience, and awareness. School administrators began to acknowledge the impact of the hallway incident. They recognized that bullying was a complex issue, involving not only physical interactions but also social and emotional dynamics. They implemented measures to ensure that students felt safe and respected, while also observing how resilience and composure could influence the environment. The quiet student, without seeking recognition, had sparked meaningful change in the culture of her school. The respect she had earned was not limited to students or teachers. Even community members who were aware of her experiences noted her composure and maturity. She became, in small ways, a role model for those who faced challenges and adversity. Her story was one of quiet triumph, showing that strength is not always loud or aggressive but can be steady, controlled, and thoughtful. Despite the recognition she received, she remained humble. She never sought attention or validation. Her satisfaction came from knowing that she had stayed true to herself, maintained her boundaries, and handled the situation with skill and composure. She understood that true strength was about control, awareness, and resilience, not about seeking approval from others. Her friends continued to support her, forming bonds that were based on respect and mutual understanding. They admired her ability to navigate challenges with grace and composure. In return, she offered kindness, empathy, and support, understanding that strength included lifting others as well as standing firm. These relationships strengthened her sense of community and belonging, reminding her that resilience was not just an individual quality, but also a shared experience. The quiet student reflected often on the lessons she had learned. She understood that being underestimated was not a weakness. It was an opportunity. She had transformed a situation that could have been negative into a moment of empowerment. She realized that her calm authority and composure had influenced others' perceptions and changed the dynamics around her. She had learned that patience, focus, and preparedness were just as powerful as any physical skill. In her daily life, she continued to face challenges, as all students do. Crowded hallways, academic pressures, and social expectations remained. But now she approached each challenge with confidence and clarity. She understood that her abilities were not limited by what others assumed about her. She had learned to rely on her own preparation, awareness, and inner strength, rather than seeking validation from anyone else. Her experiences also influenced how she interacted with others. She became more empathetic, understanding that people often act out of fear, ignorance, or insecurity. She offered kindness and support to those who needed it, while maintaining her boundaries with those who had once sought to harm her. Her composure became a model for handling conflict with dignity and intelligence. School life became smoother over time. The bullies remained present but were no longer dominant. Other students treated her with respect and awareness. Teachers were more vigilant, ensuring that the environment was safe and supportive. The quiet student had not only defended herself, but had also influenced the culture around her, creating a more positive atmosphere for everyone. Her martial arts training continued to strengthen her, both physically and mentally. Each movement reinforced her focus, control, and awareness. The lessons she had learned extended beyond the classroom and hallways into every aspect of her life. She understood that true power was about being prepared, maintaining composure, and asserting oneself with precision and thoughtfulness. At home, she reflected on her journey. She realized that strength is not measured by how others treat you, but by how you respond to challenges. She understood that patience, observation, and careful action could shift dynamics, influence perceptions, and create meaningful change. Her family recognized her growth, proud not only of her abilities but also of her character and resilience. The quiet student also considered the future. She knew that life would continue to test her, presenting new challenges and obstacles, but she felt ready. She had proven to herself that she could handle difficult situations with composure and skill. She understood that resilience was not about avoiding conflict, but about facing it with preparation, intelligence, and calm confidence. Her story became an example for others. Students, friends, and even teachers looked to her as a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, that quiet strength can be powerful, and that patience and preparedness can overcome intimidation. She had demonstrated that being underestimated was not a limitation, but an opportunity to reveal one's true capabilities. As time went on, the quiet student continued to live her life with balance, focus, and awareness. She attended classes, practiced her martial arts, and maintained relationships with those who supported her. She continued to navigate social and academic challenges with confidence, understanding that her strength came from both her abilities and her composure. Even in moments of tension or uncertainty, she remained calm and measured. She understood that true power was not about dominance or aggression, but about awareness, patience, and self-respect. She had faced adversity, defended herself, and influenced the perceptions of others, all while remaining true to who she was. Her confidence grew, not from external validation, but from knowing that she had handled difficult situations with intelligence and composure. She understood that being respected and acknowledged by others was valuable, but it was secondary to her own sense of self-worth and capability. The quiet student continued to inspire others, not through dramatic actions or loud declarations, but through her steady presence, her calm authority, and her ability to handle challenges with grace. Her story was one of empowerment, showing that resilience, patience, and composure can transform not only individual experiences, but also the environment around them.